Well, hello. So what I'm doing today is to give you a complete run through of how to build your cover for your Shakespeare play using the assets that we've provided. Now, you do need to download some things, and the way you do this is really just to go to the Moodle page. So I've got that open at the moment. You could have actually already done this if you'd seen it in week one, but basically you need to download this zip file, which I'm going to do right now. So that on my Safari, it goes straight into my downloads folder. If you're using Google Chrome, then it might do something slightly different. But eventually what you'll need is a zip file which will be unpacked. Now on the Mac with using Safari, actually automatically unpacks into a folder. And that basically is in my downloads folder. Now I've already done this a couple of times, so actually, what we're going to be seeing here is not just one. We're going to be seeing several. So let's actually just have a look. So as you can see, I've done it several times just to make sure that it's all working. But essentially what we've got here is something called Shakespeare Repo Master. So that's where all the assets are kept. So I'm just going to show you that. So this is what you get in that folder. And what we need, you're going to need all of this stuff throughout the semester because, of course, you've got the text of the plays. Whichever play you've chosen, you're going to find that XML version in here. We don't need that yet, but we will need it later on. Oh, also various other things. For example, the outline of his life of Shakespeare for the introductory text, and also some images. But what we actually need right now is in the resources folder. Now, what I would suggest is that you take this whole folder and put it into a place that you can then use as your project folder. Now, I'm not going to use Google Drive myself, but I recommend that you use Google Drive. The reason I'm not using Google Drive is I'm actually working at home right now, so I'm not really needing to use a computer, any different computer from the one that I've got. So I'm basically got all my stuff in a particular folder, and that's where I'm keeping everything. But what we will need to do is to run a template for InDesign. Now, if you look in the resources folder, and I'm unpacking that now, I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see. But essentially, these files that are named INDT, these are templates. And as you can see, we've actually got 4 of them at the moment. And the one that we really ultimately need for this assignment is the full cover. We have provided you one called front cover, which just gives you the shape of the front of the book. If you wanted to use that as an experiment to see what you want to do for that particular front of the cover, but the full cover, which is what I'm going to double tap now, will open InDesign. Now I'm going to talk through this because InDesign is going to take a few moments to load up. In your case, if you haven't done it before, then it's going to take more time than me. But essentially, wherever you are, if you're using this at home or if you're using this in the Tong IT suite, then this part of the process is going to take a little bit longer if you haven't got InDesign open already. But essentially what's going on now is it's actually creating an InDesign file from that template. So I'll see you the other side of this pause. Right, so as you can see, this is now opened InDesign with a file. And I'm just going to show you what we've actually got here. We've got a file called Untitled at the moment. And what we need to do, first of all, is to save this. So you need to really understand that we haven't got a file called template, we've got a file called Untitled. So what you're seeing up here is that. So you need to make sure that you then save this before you continue to work. But I just want to look through this and explain to you what we've actually got here. So what we've actually got is one single page landscape format. And this actually has been set up so that it has, as you can see, construction lines to indicate where the spine will be. And we've actually given you a spine of 12 millimeters. And that may or may not be the right size ultimately, but that doesn't matter because this is obviously just working on the design. It may be thinner, it may be thicker, depending on the number of pages and which play you've chosen and so forth. Now, the other thing to indicate to you is that we've got this this line, inner line. What you're seeing here is that the white, what we see as white, is the final cover shape. So whatever is trimmed off will be this. So this is what you're going to see. However, the internal line is just indicating what you might regard as just an arbitrary margin space. It's not critical, that margin space. Indeed, you can even change it. You can put things outside the margin space. It's only an indication of really, if you like, when we're getting near to the edge of the book. But you don't need to make use of it. You can go right out beyond it. So that margin is only really significant more in the internal pages. But we'll come on to that later. The other thing that you'll notice is there's a red line going all the way outside. That indicates the bleed line. So what that means is that if you want to include any images or colours or anything that you want to go to the edge of the book, then you need to make sure that it goes out beyond the white space to the red line. So this means that essentially that what will be trimmed off is indicated by that line. So I'll just give you an example of that. If I show you a book here, this, for example, this obviously has been printed with black or a dark grey anyway over the whole of the book, but that would have been printed right the way to 3mm out beyond the shape of the book, so that the printer then would be trimming that off. This is like a sort of safety measure to make sure that you're never going to see any white at the edge. So that make sure you do that if you want colour to go right to the edge. Right. Okay. So this is your space then in which you are going to work, and obviously on the left-hand side, I hope it's obvious. On the left-hand side is what will be the back of the book. Then we have the spine in the middle, and then on the right-hand side is the front of the book. Now, if you want to, if it helps you to work just on the front to give you an idea of what you're working towards for the front of the book, because obviously the front of the book is key to this, but you are thinking about it as a whole eventually. You could, if you want to, and it's entirely optional, open up the front cover one, which we've provided. But that just shows you the shape of the front cover. And as you can see, we still have a red bleed line, but it's only on 3 edges. So if you wanted to sort of make use of that space to add in images or sort of just work on the front part, then you could use that one if you prefer. But ultimately, whatever you put on here needs to go onto the right-hand side of this landscape page. So you would need to copy and paste all of that and put it back into here. So it's really just an alternative. But this, what we're looking at here now, this is what you will need to use to create your cover. Okay, so however you do it, whatever you make, ultimately it all has to go onto this space. Okay, now you can actually see if we go to File and go to Document Setup, you can see what we've actually got here. This is showing you the width and the height of this particular book or page that we're looking at. And you can see we've got a bleed of 3mm all the way around. That's, it wouldn't matter if you went beyond 3mm, but that's the sort of standard really, is to go 3mm bleed so that people can trim that off, okay? And then as you can see, we've got the width and the height this is essentially calculated on the basis of the page size of the book, because we've got a height of 198 and then 270 is made up of twice the page width, adding then the spine width, which is in this case 12mm. Okay, so that you don't need to change anything here, but that is what we've actually got. Now, there's one other thing I should point out. We've got something called a slug. Now, the slug is just an area around the page, or around the white space that's actually not on the white space, and we've got a slug of 10mm at the top and a slug of 20mm at the bottom. There's no particular reason to use the slug at the top, but at the bottom we need you to put your name in that space. And that slug normally is there for the printer to see any other information. So if you wanted to put some other information in there for the printer, you could put it there. In other words, when the PDF is created, it will be available for the PDF, but it won't necessarily be printed because it's going to be outside the print area. Okay.